Oh, I think we got to go back to the. I think she ended up on the stage.
Hey, Beth.
Hi there. How are you?
How are you?
She was on stage. Thank you so much for walking us through.
Can you hear me okay?
I know Vermont.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Thanks so much for hopping on. We appreciate it. You know how busy you are.
No problem. I'm sure everybody knows by this point we were having some technical difficulties, which is always fun with these, even a year and a half in now to COVID.
I was just about to start my solo performance of karaoke, so you spared the 200 people watching. So
that's right.
Well, welcome everyone. Hope you're having a great week. All FinTech oriented week. Definitely an exciting week in the FinTech community. And hats off to the organizers for a great week. My name is Nikhil Lakenpal. I'm one of the co-founders of a financial technology firm called NARMI, N-A-R-M-I. We work with community and regional banks and credit unions to deploy digital banking software. So account opening software, business mobile banking, consumer mobile online banking, analytics software, all, the list goes on and on. And, I'll definitely share more about NARMI and some of the work we do throughout today's session. But more importantly, we have Beth Johnson with us, the Chief Experience Officer at Citizens Bank. And Beth, thank you again for joining. I think it'd be really helpful just to know a little bit about yourself. You have a super interesting background, very impressive background, if I must say. So would love to, understand your journey to Citizens, and then maybe what you do on a day-to-day basis would be helpful for me.
Happy to. So we were talking about this yesterday. I know I started my journey in financial services in sales and trading. So I am a math geek at heart. And back in the 90s, now dating myself, I was helping to build one of the first value at risk systems globally in the world. So that was kind of my math geekiness coming out, and then went from there to business school, and then really started my journey on thinking about the customer holistically. So moved from interest rate derivatives and global risk management to Bain, where I led our customer strategy and marketing practice for the Americas. And to me, that was really what we're going to talk about later today, which was all about if you're going to be a successful company over time, you're going to do it by having great experiences for your customers. And then how do you build all the capabilities behind that? So coming out of that about 8 years ago, our CEO, Bruce Van Saun, asked me to join Citizens and to help us as we were getting ready for an IPO, so separating from RBS. We successfully did that, and then started to refocus and really think about how do we build capabilities in an area and in a banking landscape that's just becoming more and more disrupted, new technologies, new entrants, new ways of operating, new customer demands, and really build some of the capabilities that we need to ensure we can be successful with our customers. And that's the current role. So 2 years ago, we created a experience organization, and myself as the Chief Experience Officer to really build those capabilities. So that includes our digital team, our customer analytics team supporting those digital experiences and designs, our marketing organization, where we're seeing tremendous change happening in the environment, and enterprise payments and innovation capability, as well as agile transformation. So again, all about those capabilities towards disruption.
Great. Let's just dive right into, I think, one of the first things you said. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but we at NARMI are very passionate about this too. And that's this thesis that superior experiences will drive outsized outcomes for banks and credit unions. That is a fundamental belief on our side of the table. But if I'm being honest, I don't think the financial institutions are ready for that shift. I don't think if you walk into a boardroom or a executive team room and say, hey team, if we really make this the most beautiful banking experience known in the world, Citizens will be, and I don't mean to pick on Citizens, but your bank will be number one. And we go through the FinTechs where these challenger banks, which quite frankly don't have a lot of functionality that a bank like Citizens or as much, like you offer pretty much everything under the sun, and FinTech, I would say, offers maybe 2% of that, and that's pretty aggressive. But yet they lead with experience, and the growth rates have been, astronomical. So, can you talk to the audience a little bit about how you've clearly you've brought this mindset to Citizens where experience is very important. And I would love to hear a little bit about that, and maybe I can piggyback off that after you.
Yeah, maybe just a couple of reactions to that. I do think it's critical for banks that are going to win in the future to be thinking about the experience and the experience holistically, and where you're going to pick your battles to have the best experience for the customers you're focused on. And so I think Citizens is on that journey. I will say we've made some really good foundational investments that we're very proud of as we think about being able to deliver for the customer. So about 3 years ago, we launched our Green Pixel Studios. It's actually some of the pictures behind me, but a UX UI lab and studio to be able to really learn from our customers and focus on them and be able to develop not just digital solutions, but holistically for the customers in terms of design blueprinting and journey blueprinting for our customers. We were willing to invest in a state-of-the-art UX UI lab in our new offices in Westwood, out just in the suburb of Boston here. So really started to invest and put our money where our mouth is, in the belief that we've got to differentiate from a customer perspective and have some really good proof points and things we've recently done with a relaunch of our mobile app, or with our Citizens Pay product and buy now, pay later, where Citizens is pretty distinct from a banking perspective. So I think that's critically important. At the same time, we also invested in some of the fundamental capabilities to be able to better listen to our customers, to really get the voice of our customer in front of all of our different colleagues across the bank, whether that's in our commercial bank or in our consumer bank, to be able to listen to our customers every day and get that feedback and get it real time to continue to drive a very customer first mindset in this changing landscape.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it seems like we're all using the term UIUX Labs. Narmi actually created our own UIUX
Jill,
Labs.
did we lose you?
Ooh. Can you hear me? Beth, can you hear me? Okay, I think, Beth, you good? Oh, Beth, you there? Sorry, folks, we're just having a little technical difficulties. I hope she comes back on so I don't have to do any singing here. Well, while Beth is doing that, so kind of piggybacking off this concept of UIUX Labs, so Citizens is a $185 billion bank, right? I would argue that's probably top 20, maybe top 50 in the world, or at least in the country. So typically what we see at banks those size is they do have the internal resources to build a lot of the technology in-house, the mobile banking, the online banking, the data resource, data warehouses, all that good stuff. So Narmi typically serves $100 billion and below. So similar to Beth's team, we have our own UIUX Labs. And I want you to, if you ever come to New York, please do stop by. So literally it's this room in our office where it's got multiple Android devices, multiple tablets, multiple iOS devices, and we battle test a lot of our new features and functionality. And one of the things we really focus on is, what are the banks and credit unions not asking us to build? And you might be like, wait, that makes no sense. Like, why would you build something that your customers aren't asking? Well, what we found is it's actually our job to bring these user experience enhancements. No, unless you get to Citizen size or maybe the money center bank size, we've typically found most banks don't have the resources to actually understand if they change this screen and add this functionality, call center volume will drop 50%. So we take that on us. Clearly, Beth's team has taken it on themselves and wanted to, so Beth, I think we should probably get together after this and trade notes, because we're doing a lot of the same work. But that was great to hear about it. Are you back? Are you back, by the way? Okay.
I am totally back and listening to you and tracking. I hear you might have asked me a question I didn't hear. So everybody, please just bear with us a little bit on the line here. Hopefully this will go smoothly from here on out. So did you ask me a question about whether every bank should have a
Yeah, so Jim from the audience does have a question. Should every bank have a chief experience officer, and if that's asset dependent, if that's tech dependent, branch heavy dependent? Curious to know your thoughts.
I think every company, frankly, should have an eye towards experiences and building those great experiences for your customers. I think the role of a chief experience officer can take on a lot of different meanings and a lot of different things. But what I think is critical is creating that culture and then the tools and the capabilities that you need to be able to offer great experiences. And if it helps to have a chief experience officer to kind of turbocharge those efforts, then I think that's critical. I also think you need someone with a really strong voice at your executive table, at your leadership table, that can provide that, that perspective and be willing to ask the hard questions around the customer. And I think that's a key role that a chief experience officer can play.
Does your role also span physical? Like, are you thinking through the experience in branches or the human element? Like if someone calls in and talks to a human, or someone meets citizens at, a baseball game where you're sponsoring an event, are you involved in that, or is that a separate role?
Yeah, so our journey designers and our journey blueprinters are absolutely multi-channel. We want to make sure that we are mobile first, but that we're mobile first with the ability to have a human touch as needed. So we work closely with both our commercial bank as well as our consumer bank to do exactly that. So if we're thinking about a process, if it's opening an account, how do you seamlessly move across channels in the best way? To your point with the contact center, we're always looking at what are the digital capabilities we should be building that, frankly, customers would rather have self-serve than going through a contact center, but then working with our agents to be able to educate our customers. So we've invested in this, I use the words journey blueprinting, but a journey blueprinting capability to be able to look front of house, back of house, channel agnostic. How do we think about a journey holistically, both from an overarching customer perspective, but all of those processes and policies and all the things in the guts of the system to be able to offer a seamless experience to our customers.
Very cool. Given Citizens is such a full service bank, right? Commercial, small business, consumer, lending, you name it. One of the areas NARMI is really doubling down on is the business side of the world, where we feel that there's been so much innovation and progress on user experience in banking when it comes to consumers. In fact, when you look at the neobanks and you look at their market share, they're all consumer driven. And we talk a lot about like who has the direct deposit, who's the primary FI, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't seen that emphasis on user experience really come to business as fast as we would have expected. And obviously, I feel NARMI is ahead of the curve there. Curious to know if Citizens is also thinking about that. Like, how do you think about the business user experience side of it? Because at the end of the day, people who work at businesses are humans too, right? So it's not like you walk into work and you're like, well, I want a crappy banking experience. Nobody says that. So Beth, just curious on your thoughts there, if you have anything to share.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, which is humans are humans. And I'm a fan of the human-centered design concept, which is if I'm in a bank and or I'm in a corporate client and I'm in their treasury department and I'm dealing with my bank, I want simple digital tools that are going to enable my everyday transactions. So we are absolutely thinking about that. And I think you're starting to see that more and more in small business and more in large corporations needs from banks, particularly in the payments functions and in the treasury solutions process, where we think about payables and receivables and things that companies are managing every day. I think it's an interesting transition for that part of the business, which has been very people oriented for a very long time. So how do you have a great relationship manager that can offer great advice to the corporate clients and continue to develop the relationships from there, often starting with lending? I think you're starting to see that evolve. So you are starting to see those digital tools be really important in cash management, and cash management starting to lead relationships. I think you're seeing content even in traditional M&A spaces or in lending spaces, being able to offer highly relevant digital content at the right time to a CEO or a CFO as a client is critically important. So we are seeing that in the business side as well. And I think you're right. A great example of that we did recently at Citizens is our enterprise content team actually got our cyber experts. So, cybersecurity is obviously a key skill set for any bank, together with some industry experts. And we're able to do a webinar for our corporate clients to help them think through a topic that we spend so much time on, and do that in a multi-channel way. So through video, but also through the ability to then send content as follow-up, do it for a couple different levels of our client organizations. So I think you're going to see more and more of these tools be used across both sides of the banking landscape.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, and if it's helpful for the group here, just some stats we've seen on the NARMI side. So, and I'll just rattle them off. So, for example, if you have a business banking platform and you have entitlements on it, that's not a check the box experience anymore. Because we had one bank and they had a business banking platform, and people had the capability to add and remove other users through online banking, but 95% of them would still call in because it was incredibly clunky to do so and confusing. So they'd rather speak to someone than do it in 30 seconds. So if you can optimize that, you'll see call center volumes drop. Data point number 2, your average small to medium business has 4x the average deposit balance as a consumer. But data shows, at least on our side, you can automate the digital and transactional experience for those SMBs. As Beth was saying, as you get higher into commercial, I actually don't think you want to lose that human touch, because those can be very, very lucrative, complex lending deals. You just need a human, and the revenue justifies that. But for the SMB, you can actually automate that relationship. And while they have a 4x average deposit balance, your cost to serve them will not be 4x the consumer. It'll be maybe 1.2, 1.3x. So you pick up some really great margin on the business side too. All of that margin is not by doing anything crazy. It's just by really delivering a superior user experience. So I just wanted to share that, if that's helpful. Beth, maybe transitioning a little bit, there are a lot of hot trends in FinTech. I mean, Google hot trends in FinTech, and you won't even know where to start. But one that's really risen to the top, and one that, I know Citizens has done some really great work on, is buy now, pay later. And, I definitely believe in this functionality. I do think it brings a lot of value to the everyday consumer, but it has blown up maybe a little too quickly. So just curious to know your thoughts. How have you approached that Citizens? What have you rolled out, and how have you kind of, focused your efforts at the bank on it?
Yeah, happy to. So Citizens was an early mover in the buy now, pay later space, really through a partnership we had with Apple, where we did the financing for the Apple iPhone upgrade product. And then we're able to add some great brands after that, like Microsoft. Most recently, we launched with BJ's, which many of you in the Boston area will probably see in the Northeast, and announced that. But what I think is distinctive and interesting about the buy now, pay later space is there are two customers. And sometimes I think people forget that there are two fundamental customers with needs. So you have the merchant, and it's critically important to help the merchant with their needs. So how do you think about making sure they can attract more customers? How do you think about helping them with the data behind their customers so they can be targeted in what they're offering, and give ways for them to buy purchases that are highly relevant to them and their business? And on the flip side, there's the consumer, and there is absolutely a segment of the population that doesn't want to lever up with credit card debt, and absolutely, can use a buy now, pay later solution to be more fiscally responsible in how they make purchases and how they buy things. So when we think about our Citizens Pay product, we're really thinking about both. So how do we have great solutions for the end user, and at the same time have great solutions for our merchant partners across the business? And one of the things that's cool about our capabilities and our ability to do that is we can do it in a multi-channel way. So if I want to buy a TV on BJ's online, I can use Citizens Pay to do my buy now, pay later financing. But I can also walk into the store and through a simple QR code interface on my mobile phone, buy that same TV with a digital tool in a physical location. And I think it's those kinds of offerings that can, you asked the question earlier, but can span channel, can span customer groups that provide a need that's really unmet in the marketplace today, though this one growing fastly and lots of announcements in the last 2 weeks in the space. I think you're going to continue to see that be great solutions for the customer base.
No, I love that. And it's probably a broader question I'd love to ask you is what is your approach and the Citizens Bank approach to innovation in general? And maybe just to provide a little bit more color on this question or guidance is like, do you take on 10 projects and 5 are going to fail, but 2 will be really great? Do you like to do a lot of research up front before you take on a project so you have high conviction it'll succeed? There's so many different innovation models, and it's hard to. Also, banks aren't known to be innovative, so I'm really excited to hear what you've done with Citizens, if you're willing to share, of course.
Yeah, happy to. So we decided about 4 or 5 years ago that innovation was going to be critical to the success of Citizens going forward. And so we started our innovation journey doing a lot of what you just said. Let's understand best practices. Let's understand how others are investing. Let's think about how we're going to drive a culture of innovation, because that's really what it's going to take. It's got to be an innovation mindset within all levels of our organization. So we've done some things both structurally, but then also just holistically to try to drive that capability. So we do have a very small central innovation team that has a small fund to just enable ideas to bubble up throughout the organization and get a little bit of funding for test and learn. We don't expect all of them to succeed, but we are tracking which of those ultimately are able to go into our commercial operations. At the same time, we've put in place in our agile structures, we use a town neighborhood pod construct. Many of you probably call things differently, but we're actually putting goals that are stretch goals into the fabric of our everyday business so that our teams are having to think about innovation and with customer at the center of it if they're going to be able to meet their objectives going forward. So that's in the main part of the organization. And then the third leg of the stool is a cultural one. So how do we start celebrating innovation in everything we do? So we have what we call Credo Awards. Customers, colleagues, and communities are the Citizens Credo. They have been for a very long time, but we've added an Innovation Awards. So how do our Credo Awards also capture innovation? We're doing a celebratory event at Gillette Stadium in the next month. And we're actually giving, our CEO is calling people on stage to give them awards around people who were innovative in the bank and able to drive us and push us forward in new and different ways. Sometimes big, sometimes small, depending on where you are in the organization. But recognizing that is a key leadership quality and colleague quality we want throughout the organization to make sure we're thinking about those innovative ideas.
Yeah. I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So one of the things I think banks want to be innovative. I think the intention is 100% there. Like that's not true, but most bank CEOs or C-suite teams will never say, hey, we're good on this innovation side. We don't want to grow. Like, I don't typically hear that. But then when you get in the weeds, and I'll give you an example. So we have an account opening product, right? 2 minutes and 13 seconds, we can open a checking account for a bank. I've never seen anyone do it faster. And part of that is because we've built a way on the identity verification where we don't have to collect a driver's license. And this has been validated by the FFIEC guidelines. We have dozens of banks and credit unions using this. But then, we get into a bank, and so there's the desire to innovate, which is a faster account opening process. And because of that, you want to strip out these legacy compliance requirements. But then internally at the bank, there's a desire to keep those legacy compliance requirements. And I could probably give you a dozen examples of this. I just picked one off the top of my head, Beth. So the question is, how do you balance the desire to innovate with being a bank? I don't know how else to say it. Like, being a bank, being heavily regulated. I know a bank your size, you probably have multiple regulators there all the time, right there in your cafeteria with you. So, and at times or often those clash with each other. So is this like a enterprise-wide initiative where it has to be, or does the CEO or CXO just have to say, no, we're prioritizing innovation? Can you talk to that a little bit?
I think you have to say you're prioritizing innovation, and that's at the highest levels of the company. So our CEO does talk about the innovation as a priority. But I also think we are regulated, so you have to do that in a well-controlled way. But the right risk partner can be highly innovative and highly helpful in how we drive innovation across the company. And we've developed that skill set on that team. And we always talk about it as help us get to yes, right? Don't tell us why we can't do something. 90% of the time, there's a way to do it. 10% of the time, there's probably not, because we are highly regulated. But the job description can change, even with our risk partners, to help us get to yes. And we're seeing more and more of that mindset here as we build out our organization. And from our chief risk officer on down, he kind of takes that mindset for us, which is let's stay really well controlled. Let's have a great risk environment, but let's use that risk to help us drive the business forward. It's not about holding back innovation.
Yeah, totally. And how did you like when you announced this? Seems like a few years ago you had this pivotal change at Citizens, or at least this became a huge priority. How did you all announce it to the org? Like, I'm talking to the internal employees. Did you have a town hall? Did you have or was it deeper than that? Just curious on how this.
I think you have to talk about innovation and start celebrating innovation in everything you do. So yes, our CEO sort of broadly started talking about it in town halls and across, as well as all of our leadership team, all of his executive committee. But as I said, it sort of started to embed into the fabric of the organization. So what we celebrate, putting some investment dollars aside. So putting your money where your mouth is. We do demo days. So we love to have, sort of FinTechs come in from the outside and give colleagues the opportunity to see what's happening out there. We have the resources to do that. We've invested in them, as I've said, in a small group at the center as well. So I think you've got to do everything every day. It's a constant drumbeat if you're going to have an organization that is a bank and has been around for over 100 years, that's sort of pushing itself to be increasingly innovative as we think about the future. Sure.
Do you who does Citizens view as its competition?
Oh, what a great question. I think it's a broad competitive base. It's certainly other banks, but as you said, it's been increasingly outside of the banking sphere. So you got to think about the PayPals of the world. They're the ones that probably keep me up at night more than anyone else. But it's also on the commercial side, there are disintermediaries coming in as well that are non-bank lenders. We see FinTechs as partners, and primarily partners, frankly, for this group today, and enabling us to help us on our journey. But also there are some that are competitors, as well as the large banks. What I usually say is, as banking is evolving so quickly, and I think we'll see major changes over the next 5 years, there are going to be winners and losers from all sides. So we've got, big tech I didn't mention, but of course, big tech is in there as well, as you see what Apple's doing, and Google you mentioned. So I think we've got to start to think about how do we differentiate in an increasingly competitive landscape, and that the winners are going to come from all those groups.
Yeah, I love what you said at the end there. And I try to, when I'm doing these strategic planning board sessions, sometimes I almost basically say what you said, where there's competition, which is, okay, you have a consumer or business and they need a checking account, where are they going to go? That's competition. But then there's also inspiration. And I think 10 years ago, inspiration was, we want to be like Chase, or we want to be like Capital One's app. And honestly, I don't even think their apps are that great. And sorry if there's that, I don't think they've set a standard that's, not obtainable. But now I think inspiration has morphed to just the best in class consumer experience. And that might be your United Airlines or Delta Airlines app. That might be Netflix. That might be, Apple Card, and how easy it is to get a credit card through them. So, I loved you mentioned, I think honestly, Google has set the bar for what experience should be. And I think we as banks and credit unions just need to understand, searching for a flight or searching for an image is just like searching for a transaction, at least to a consumer. And if we're not on par, then we've got work to do. I think is kind of the end result. So
yeah, the only thing I'll add in there, and it's related to a question I just saw pop up in the chat, but I think it's even more than that. So I think customers now are searching for great experiences, but there's a funny stat that you can look at that I've seen over time about why customers choose their bank. And to your point, probably 10 years ago, the data showed even 5 years ago, it was all branch on the consumer side and branch location. For a while, digital actually started to spike up as to why consumers chose their branch, but that's actually gone back down. And now more than half the reason is brand. And I think the reason digital went up and back down is digital apps today for managing your money more holistically and for banks are pretty much all considered table stakes and equal. So I think the next phase of digital and banking is going to be about differentiation through your app, but I'm not sure, to your point, that anybody's fully gotten there yet today. But this idea of brand, and we talk about that as another important attribute, has become increasingly important. So how do my customers perceive me? Do they know who I am? Do they know what I stand for? Do they think I'm a good member of the community? Do they think I'm taking ESG, environmental topics seriously, or diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's becoming increasingly important to our customers. And there's a lot of innovation in marketing happening as well, which I think we sometimes forget when we only talk about the mobile app, which is, how do we talk about our brand? How is content delivered? How do we think about using addressable channels versus mass media that we used to rely on? And that's the other area of really big innovation I think we're starting to see in banking. And again, really driven by customer need and customer want going forward. So it's an important balance, I think, to the mobile side, to the branch side, which is not going to go away. We're going to continue to need that human interaction and touch to differentiate, but that strength of brand becoming increasingly important as well.
And definitely agree with that. What are the brand? What does Citizens want to stand for? What's the brand that you all have put out there or want to put out there?
Yeah, so our brand platform is made ready. We launched it a couple of years ago, but I think there's a fundamental nuance which is allowing us to differentiate with customers. And we have it as a corporate brand platform. So all our constituents, whether corporations, whether they're consumers, whether they're investors, or whether they're in the community, but we want to help you on your journey and your life's journey, particularly your financial journey, and help you get to your end state. And one of the things we recognize is that too often banks put out these aspirational images about how I'm going to help you get to this wonderful retirement where I'm sailing on a boat over the water and the sun's on the end. And we're in a society today where we do that all the time, right? I run the marathon and I put up a picture of me looking great at the end, but everybody knows there was hard training. So what Citizens is really doing is developing the tools and the ability to help our customers in the hard times as well as the good times, and recognize that the journey's not always easy, but we're going to be your financial partner to get you there. And then we lived it. So, COVID had many ups and downs, but one of the things that allowed us to do is stand behind that brand promise to our customers. And they've really started to recognize us for it. So we've seen, increases in business from a variety of different segments based on kind of living that that promise that we had for our customers.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that is personalization to me. Personalization is a massive theme as well in digital banking, as I'm sure you know. And I think I'm trying to compare it to 5 years ago, where personalization was, "Hi Beth, good morning, welcome to your online banking experience." So it was just the phrase of saying "Hi Beth" was personalization, and no. But now it's, okay, this is Beth's financial profile. We can see her balance is down. Can we offer her an interest-free loan for 30 days? Or can we increase her immediate availability when she deposits a check? Just things like that are tied to the financial experience and, to your point, journey. I mean, that's personalization. And I do think the money center banks have really struggled with that because they're just so massive. That it's really hard to do that on an individual level. So I do think there's a really great opportunity there for what it's worth.
I agree with you. I think that's what's going to differentiate going forward. And that said, we're on our journey on it. Every bank, I think, is talking about personalization. In my agile world, I have a town called personalization because I think that's the new buzzword. But when I talk about it, what I think is key and people often forget is there's the kind of analytic engine that creates what I should be talking to Beth about if I'm talking to her as a person. But then there's a big technology component of this, which is all the channels that need to link into that. So how do I surface personalized information to my customers on the mobile app? And it is a very, very important channel, but make sure that that's consistent with what I'm talking about via text or via email or in the branch or through a small business advisor or a wealth advisor or a mortgage loan officer, really being able to make sure all the pipes are there and the integrations to deliver the great personalization capabilities and scale it up so that we can have that interaction model of one with our customers. And that's going to continue to be a journey. And that's one, frankly, where we both have built great capabilities ourselves, but we also partner with other providers in the industry to be able to ensure that we can offer those seamless interactions.
For sure. We've talked a lot about great things Citizens been doing the last few years, and I'm super excited for your journey moving forward. I think it'd be really helpful for the audience and honestly myself too. What are some lessons learned along this innovation journey? I'm sure it wasn't all up and to the right. I'm sure there were some failures or whatever you want to call them, lessons learned, not failures. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves that those happen and learn from them. So if you have any, be willing to share, I think we'd all really appreciate it.
Yeah, there are two things I think I would say are really important for us. I think one of the Citizens watch outs that we particularly have is we get really good at innovating on what I'll call the happy path, which is if everything kind of goes exactly according to plan, it's a really great innovative experience for our customers. But we too often still allow things to knock us off the happy path. And one of the things our journey designers, and we've hired some recent people from Nike and other areas are pushing us, is to let's make sure that you're thinking about the non-happy path. So what happens when you get knocked off that? And I just had it happen with my 17-year-old who just got her first bank account. When the debit card instant issue machine is down in the branch, what's still a happy path as good as it can be?
Yeah.
Versus something sort of everything goes awry. And that's a key learning for Citizens and something we're still pushing to figure out how to expand that. And then the second one I think you already touched on, which is if you're going to start innovating, everything's not going to work. And if your banks are so financially driven and ROI driven that you have to realize that your overall ROI is going to be the ability to test more and test in small increments to then make sure when you make big bets, they're big and they're going to work. But you got to look at that measurement holistically. You can't look at your return on every little thing because then you'll never make the investments you need to learn and to grow. And sort of linking that financial and working with your finance team in conjunction with your innovation efforts on that dimension, I think is critically important and been helping us to drive change. Yeah,
for sure. And just to double click on both those points, but especially the first point, we also we know things are going to have so I'll give you a very tangible example. Part of NARMI's job is to integrate with core banking systems. And for those of you who don't know, core banking systems are basically the back end enterprise general ledger systems at a bank. And these core banking systems go down. They go down. They're not very reliable. Don't tell them I said that, but they just aren't. They happen to go down. But that is a non-happy path, right? Because you're going to try to get data, but you can't get it. But there are still things you can do on the front end to make that user journey more not horrible. It can be acceptable or even above acceptable. So I think that's a really important point, Beth, where you can't just focus on everything going great because stuff does go wrong. And if you don't focus on that, well, that will kill you too. So yeah. We're just about out of time here. Are there any closing words for the group on just innovation, at banks or experience at banks? Anything you'd like to share with the team that we didn't cover?
No, I thought this was really helpful. Maybe just a big thank you for having the conversation here, and a shout out to those listening. And just reiterating one thing I said, which I do think innovation is never going to be all in-house for banks. So we really do think about how do we leverage across an experience the best of what we can build versus a partner with a FinTech or someone else in the space versus, occasionally we'll do acquisitions as well. But I think it's important to have that broad perspective. And so I value my engagements with the FinTech community and all the people that we tend to see, especially in Boston. So thanks for having me and having the conversation here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Beth. Thank you to everyone who joined us during at least the lunch hour on the East Coast. And hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.